What's up, my precious little pack, and welcome back to VEGA Conflict once more. What do I have in store for you today? Well, we're going to talk about the progression system and how it needs to be improved, or how it can be improved. The current way, you have to go through the individual strikes just to get technology to fight aliens and lose against them and take massive repair time and just discourage you from playing. Kixeye fails to see the point in listening to the player base, and that's one of the reasons I don't typically ask them for anything. I typically come up with ideas that are based around what I think could help improve the game, and I just post them. I don't actually try to communicate any of this information or relay how it would help to Kixeye. I don't post it on the forums. I just ask questions on the forums. And yes, I have been asking questions as of lately. Or I've been asking for, in the most recent case, a sneak peek at the Altarian carrier. And it wasn't just for me, I was asking for everybody, it was just a general post. But let's go ahead and let's take a moment to think about the progression system. Where does the progression system start? It actually starts in your base. Before anything else, you're actually going to be using your ship lab, your tech lab, and your arms lab, all of which are going to be your best friends, and later in the game, useless structures that just float in your base. Okay. One recommendation I have for Kixeye, this is actually aside from the point, one recommendation I have for Kixeye is to implement a use for these structures, because as it is right now, the only one any of us use that will continue to be useful as tiers come out for the markup grades are these guys right here. It's the ship lab, and it's just for the markup grades. There is no use for either of these two other than to be able to produce higher tier ships, blueprints, and things like that. So let's just take a moment, and what do I think would be the best way to make use of them? Well, first off, we have reusable items of most weapons we want blueprints for. Kixeye, you guys should take the time to just think this one over. Well, it should be taken into consideration that this should be done. Make it so that we can produce a blueprint from reusable items, so if we have a reusable item, there will be an equivalent blueprint for it. So we should be able to turn frenzied items into standard blueprints via their arms lab, because we use the arms lab, and we have had a few things like that. We've had the fusion system. Now this is a system I'm not really a fan of, because it ties up your workshop, and I would much rather just turn them into blueprints and then produce them as I need to. But I think one way to ensure that structures that aren't useful is by implementing that the reusable items you guys keep making, or credit items, make it so that we can more or less research and produce a blueprint from the reusable items, so there's actually at least some use to these structures, because once they're maxed out, there's absolutely no purpose of them at all again. And even now, I don't see much of a purpose in either of them. But back to the progression point. Alright, now that I got that out of the way, the progression system, as I was saying, works by starting off in the base. You have to research your individual ships, the weapons, and the technology for those ships, and then you use those ships to earn small blueprints in planet, which in turn will help you progress further, and then you'll start strikes and things like that to be able to progress. That system is far too slow in most people's perspective, and Kixeye's response to that would be just coin. Well, most people can't coin because most people can't drop several $100,000 into your game over the course of a year, because most people have to pay for food, clothing, housing. They have to pay bills every month. They have to do all of this stuff, and they can't drop that money in game just because. That's it. There is no major reason. They just can't do it. And the fact that some people drop several $100s in the game each month, I just look at them and think to myself, the amount of food, the amount of games, and the amount of entertainment I could have literally bought using that money, and he just drops it on a new fleet which would be obsolete in 6 months. And that's another thing. One of the reasons I don't coin is because progression makes it so technology that we have now, even my bastions, they'll be obsolete in another 2 months, because we're going to be getting the first tier 7.5 ship at some point, provided the game actually lasts that long. But progression as it currently stands, as I said, you work up through the strikes. What's wrong with the strikes and why do they make it hurt? Well, the initial variation of the strike was actually good because it was still off of the monthly standard strike. And that refers to the monthly strike that, let's take Planet Strike for example. The original targets, the 45, they actually rewarded you with 45,000 plus experience, well, intel. Right now, the current 45, they only give you 15,000. The original prize list and the prize requirements, they needed you to get, 900,000 intel for a blueprint? So you'd need roughly 20 45s to get the blueprint. And that's fine, but then they dropped it down like this. Now, the blueprints cost 350 or 400,000 intel, but you have to grind out 15,000 intel at a time. So now, instead of being 20 hits you have to hit 30 of them roughly, just for the same thing you did before. They made progression harder by reducing the points payout. And if Kixeye says that they did this just because the high levels were farming the high level in-planet targets for resources, well, yeah, because everybody needs resources, and they were the best source, and they still are in most cases, because a lot of people have to wait for the resource they need. I need antimatter, and it'll start in an hour, and I'll most likely have my upgrade started in 2 hours from that. But getting off point again. The progression system has multiple points that actually require players to take more and more time, and the further you go down the progression system, which is never ending because every time a new ship is implemented there's a new step in the progression system, it gets longer and longer and harder and harder. And a lot of people realize that and they just leave, and I don't blame them. But if it wasn't for my channel and the primary thing that you guys like to view being VEGA Conflict, I would most likely be covering other games and actually enjoying them. I can list off 3 other games from the channel that I like more that got less views. 1. Ark. Okay, Ark didn't look all that good. That's fine. Let's list 3 others then. StarCraft. I know for a fact I've had Maelstrom on the channel, and they are billions. All 3 of those are strategy games. Strategy games at their best. In my eyes, they're games that I can enjoy and I can play over and over and over. I can't play VEGA over and over and over because the repair time system, if I lose my fleet, I have to repair and I have to wait a day. So let's just take it from a YouTuber standpoint for the progression system. I can't produce content on a daily basis for a channel that says it'll produce content on a daily basis because I can't produce content on a daily basis in-game. I have to wait several days, weeks, or even up to a month to produce anything useful to show off or to play with. And the fact that all of you come around for VEGA just seems to... Well, it annoys me that you only come around for VEGA, because I do more than VEGA. I do other games as well, and I try to only put out VEGA videos lately just to entertain you guys. Alright, getting off point again. Back to progression. The system needs a rework, and it needs it desperately. The game as it is right now, from where I started and from where you guys will be at the same mark, my base is level 69 currently, and I'm trying whatever I can to try and keep the level down so I don't have to meet Paragons, because Kixeye has failed to nerf them still. They failed to balance them in any possible way. And first off, I would just like to say about the Bastions. When they did their rework, the only thing they did was they changed the amount of range. The range wasn't the problem. I didn't care if they could reach out and touch my carrier. The damage boost was the problem, because it could murder just about every fleet, and unless you scatter your ships, which I started to do whenever I see Bastions, just so I could focus one down at a time, you're going to take massive damage, especially when you drop that shield. And in my eyes now, they rebalanced the wrong thing. And when they rebalance things in the game, they tend to get it wrong. So kind of count that as an example of the progression system being a failure. And yes, I do deem the progression system in the game a failure, because when it takes a player 1 year to advance, that's far too long. And if Kickstarter's response to players is to just coin your way to where you want to be, I'm just going to remind them of this. I can recommend 163 games that all cost $5 to $20 that you can get a better entertainment value out of than VEGA. Now, to upgrade your base in VEGA to where you want to be able to play with the top tier stuff, it would cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's not even counting repair time for your fleets or anything like that. That's just counting the base itself. That's not counting out the time that you need to grind, the repairs you need to coin, things like that. So take note of that, guys. And this is another problem that's been VEGA for a long time. And YouTubers have come and gone from the game continuously. And I myself, I believe that I'm one of the few people who still talks about VEGA. I sincerely do talk about VEGA. I don't just spam out PvP videos or things like that. I do try and show off attacks every now and then, things like that. And the game in turn is slow to play. And primarily it's slow to play because of the progression system. It starts off very, very nicely, as a matter of fact, with most of the researchable technology taking under 5 days to produce, and that's fully fitted. But then you start to get up in the tiers and you start to see the strength of the ships jump up, but not by that much, but you see the build time jump up, and it just is discouraging for people to play. The development team should put a halt on all future production of the game, in my eyes, until they can balance the game, until they can find out the ideal environment for the game, because there has to be a balance between the free players and the coiners, because without your free players, you're not going to have coiners, because the same thing is repeated over and over in any MMO game. Coiners will pay just to bully their free players. What happens when your free players can't even play the game because they can't even catch up to where the coiners are at? You don't have a game, you've got people who literally, they sit there looking up for a minute, realize they're not going to be able to get there because by the time they get there, there's going to be a new tier out and they're going to have to continue and they're just going to quit. And I honestly don't blame them for doing that. And there are games that are more welcoming to them. StarCraft, for one. There is no insane production time. There is nothing like that when StarCraft Free-to-Play launched, when StarCraft Remastered came out. It is, in my eyes, a more entertaining game because I played it the vast majority of my childhood and things like that, and it was vastly more entertaining than VEGA ever has been. And if anyone thinks I haven't played any of Kickstarter's other games, level 40-something base and War Commander was where I stopped. I had Omega Titan, Omega Sandstorm, I had every hero in the game. I think I still have every hero in the game from when I quit. The point is that I've played through multiple of Kick-sized games that I stated before, and they're all the same. And I'm not going to play another game of Kick-size. When VEGA leaves the channel because I finally get something else on the channel that's better, it's never coming back. I can guarantee that. I'm kicking it to the curb. And if the last video I ever make on it is me saying that I still can't recommend it, that means that I most likely will not recommend it even if I return. And if I ever hear that the game closed or anything like that because it just went belly up because of the company, I'll silently cheer to myself that I got rid of the game. Messed up, right? Well, that's how I feel about the game. But back to the point, the progression system really needs a rework, and Kickstarter needs to stop trying to force people to coin because that's what pushes the player base away. Forcing people to coin is different from encouraging them to coin. If you actually give them a reason to coin, not just say if you don't coin you don't get to advance, they're not going to play. They're going to literally flip the bird to you and walk off. and there's not going to be anything you can do to stop them, because if you try and stop them, try and force them to coin, well, you're going to get into a brawl with a very, very nasty and very, very vicious player base that you're not going to be able to win. But that's going to be about it, everybody. I think I've said everything I wanted to, as well as get a few punches in here and there. But if you guys have any problems with the progression system as it is, like I do, and think that it's in need of a great rework, go ahead and say so below. Let's go ahead and let's see what we can say and come up with to try and find out what we can do to balance it out a little bit more. What can we do by thinking of it to help balance it and things like that. But that's going to be it for this video, everybody. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, everybody, I'll see you later.